May God bless you all, and it's signed Nina Trent. So we do appreciate this thank you card, and I do encourage you to continue to pray for Nina as she recovers from her surgery. Also, this card that I'm about to read next, I want to apologize that I received it a few weeks ago, and I just now rediscovered it and wanted to read it to you this morning. But the front of the card reads, "Thank you," and it says, "Charity Baptist Church, thank you for my beautiful birthday card that you sent me. It made my day so special, and you are such a sweet church, and I appreciate you so much. God bless you all," and it's from Miss Frances Flory. So we do appreciate her acknowledgement as well. As we consider our prayer requests this morning, let me read you the names of those that we are praying for. And as I've been encouraging you to do week to week, if you have a prayer request that you would like to add to our prayer list, if you would just give it to me in writing after the services this morning, or you can text me or call me, or however you would like to communicate it. But here are those that we need to continue to pray for: Richard Tanner, Roger Turner, Mark Turner, Blake Holman, Wanda Collier, Nora Cowell, Ellie Harris, Beneva Clark, Robin Fagala, Dusty Lynn, Jeff Huffmaster, and also Miss Jean Huffmaster, Miss Marilyn Young. Good to see Miss Marilyn here this morning. She went to the ER Friday, and she was scheduled to have some surgery this coming week, but she's having some problems that they're having to postpone her surgery. So just remember to pray for Miss Marilyn Young. Shalise Moore, Sarah Bayless, Tom Owens, Randy Staley. Randy had his gallbladder removed this past week and is recovering from that, but let's pray for Randy Staley. Johnny Pruitt, Kelly Brown, Nina Trent, the Oden family, James and Jared Winnington. Also, we need to be in prayer for our country, the leaders of our country, the upcoming election, the appointment of Supreme Court Justice. All of these things are very important to pray for, and I encourage you to be in prayer for these things. All right, well, that's those that we have on the list for today. But again, if you have someone you'd like to add to the prayer list, if you would, just give it to me in writing or through a call or text message. I do have somewhat of a disappointing announcement to make to you in regard to our food distribution. I know that we've been planning, as we were told, that the food distribution would go through the end of October. Well, we received a call from them on Thursday afternoon, and they shared with us that their food supply was totally depleted, that they would not be able to continue with the food distribution the rest of the month. So basically it's over with. This past Wednesday we'll serve as our last food distribution through this program that we've been working with the food bank with. And that is disappointing. I know a lot of people have been counting on it, depending on it, but the Lord knows, and we're just going to trust Him. But no more food distribution due to the fact that they're out of food. So I just wanted to pass that on to you. Other announcements, do keep in mind that on Sunday, November the 1st, we have designated this Sunday as Life Word Sunday. We do have a guest speaker prepared to be with us. Brother Donnie Parrish will be with us to share some things about Life Word and bring the morning message on Sunday, November the 1st. And we will also take a special offering that day for Life Word. So just be sure that you remember that. The last announcement, our offering box is on the table in the back. So if you have tithes or offerings that you would like to give, just drop it into the box on your way out this morning. All right, well, that's all that I have. I'm going to ask Brother Troy to come and lead us in the song service.
takes my breath from me. All right, it is well with my soul. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Though Satan should buffet, though trials shall come, let this blessed assurance control, that Christ has regarded my helpless estate, and has shed his own blood for my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. And Lord, haste the day when my face shall reside, the clouds be rolled back as a scroll, the trump shall resound, and the Lord shall be sent. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs that we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only.
If you feel comfortable to remove your mask, you may do so at this time. For the last few weeks, we have read and discussed James chapter 4, verses 1 through 12. Today I want us to continue with chapter 4 and to consider verses 13 through 17. So let's turn in our Bibles to James chapter 4. And our text will be verses 13 through 17. All right, let's read our text, beginning with verse 13. James wrote, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year and trade and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. So whoever knows the right thing to do and fails to do it, for him it is sin." May God bless the reading of His Word today. Much of the book of James is written to people who are struggling with pride and worldliness. It was applicable for his day. It is applicable for our day as well. For we live in a society of people who struggle with pride and worldliness. Chapter 4 and the first part of chapter 5 are filled with direct warnings. The first part of chapter 4 is a warning against pride and worldliness. That's what we've been discussing for the past several weeks. The second part of chapter 4 is a warning about boasting about tomorrow. And then the first part of chapter 5 is a warning to the rich, because they worship their riches more than they worship God. And James sends out a profound warning against that. But as we consider our text today, verse 13 of our text
talks about how some of these people were making plans for their future, but they weren't necessarily God's plans. I want to ask you this morning, do you ever try to plan your future without consulting God? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you've ever been guilty of that, or maybe even guilty now of making plans for your future without consulting God. I think we've more than likely all been guilty of that. And I pray that God will teach us lessons when we're guilty of that He'll get our attention, that we need to consult and include Him in all of our plans. But that's exactly what some of these people were doing that James was writing to. They were making plans for their future without even considering God's will or His plan. Now, their plan was very simple. Obviously, they were business people. And I want you to understand that commerce and trade was a very big deal during this time period. So, here's their plan. Today or tomorrow, they're going to such and such town. They've got it all figured out. There's a new market they've discovered. And they said, today or tomorrow, we're going to go to this new market that we've discovered, to this particular town. We're going to go there. We're going to get in on the ground floor. And we think that we can spend about 1 year there, and we're going to buy, and we're going to sell, and we're going to trade, and we're going to do business, and we're going to do it for about a year. We're going to make a pot full of money, and then we're going to come back home rich. That was their plan. Now, I want you to understand something about this passage. James is not speaking against making plans. He's not saying that it goes against God's will if we make plans for the future. Matter of fact, there are certain plans that we need to make for the future. There's wisdom when we do make plans for the future. So James is not speaking against making plans. He is speaking against making plans without including God. That's what he's speaking against. Making plans without ever consulting God, without ever considering what God's will would be for me in these matters. And he reminds them that that's awful boastful of you to think that you can foresee the future so well and that things will work out exactly like your plan. It is a sign of arrogance. It's a sign of pride. So James went on to say, you don't even know what tomorrow's going to hold. How could you dare be so bold to make these plans with such assurance when you don't even know what tomorrow's going to hold? You don't know what tomorrow will bring. Only God knows the future. We have to trust Him one day at a time. Now, folks, I want you to understand that us not knowing the future is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. Us having to trust God one day at a time is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. There's hope in that. There's certainty and assurance in that no, we don't know what tomorrow holds, but we know who holds tomorrow. And we know that He holds our hand as we go through tomorrow, whatever tomorrow might bring. Now, James reminds them that you're not comprehending the uncertainties of life. And maybe sometimes we may be guilty of not comprehending the fact that, yes, there are uncertainties of life. We don't know what will come our way tomorrow on any given day. And whether we realize it or not, God did us a great favor by not revealing the details of our future to us. Folks, God did us a great favor by not allowing us to know what is coming tomorrow, or what's coming next week, or what's coming next month, or next year, or what's coming 10 years down the road. God did us a great favor by not revealing that to us. If we knew everything that was forthcoming, we would be a nervous wreck, would we not? Many of us would not even be able to function if we knew what was coming down the road. You know, W.A. Criswell wrote, he said, "There must have been a kindness and a goodness of God in thus veiling the future from our eyes. For if man knew what tomorrow would bring, he would live in constant fear and foreboding. When it comes to dying, he would die 1,000 deaths in his mind before just dying once. Fainting, he would faint 1,000 times under a stroke that was yet to be delivered. God hides the future from our eyes that we might live each day in confidence and hope in Him." Very true. No, we don't know what tomorrow will bring, because life is full of uncertainties. What can we count on? That there will be uncertainties. No one knows the future. No one knows what a day will bring forth. We have to learn to live by faith. We have to trust in the Lord. But as we've already said, there's great confidence and assurance in that. Now, as we continue looking at verse 14, James says next, he asks a question. He says, "For what is your life?" Now, I want you to understand, he's not asking them about the origin of their life. He's basically talking about the time period from our birth until our death, our life here on earth. He asked the question, what is your life? He goes on to say, "For you are a mist or a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away." You know, when I read this example of a mist or a vapor that appears for a little time, I think about something that's boiling on the stove, maybe a teapot or something that you're cooking. As you cook it, it produces a steam or a mist, and you can watch that steam or that mist. It appears for a little while. You see it clearly, and then the next thing you know, it has vanished away. It's no longer there. And it happens very quickly. James was saying that these people need to understand the brevity of life. James is telling you and I today that we need to grasp the concept of the brevity of life. Our lives here on earth are short. Some are shorter than others. Some die in their childhood. Others die middle age. Others die in old age. But regardless of what realm or what category your lifespan ends, it's short. It appears for a little while and then it vanishes away. Job chapter 14 verses 1 and 2 talks about this. It says, man who is born of a woman is of few of days and full of trouble. He comes out like a flower and withers. He flees like a shadow and continues not. In Psalms chapter 39, verses 4 and 5, psalmist wrote something very, very similar. He said, O Lord, make me know my end, and what is the measure of my days. Let me know how fleeting I am. Behold, you have made my days a few handbreadths, and my lifetime is as nothing before you. Surely all mankind stands as a mere breath. Selah. Life is short. It's brief. Time is probably the most valuable commodity that we possess. Henry Twells wrote this poem, and it's called Time's Paces. And it just brings out a very good reality. Here's what he wrote in this poem. He said, when as a child I laughed and wept, time crept. When as a youth I waxed more bold, time walked. When older still I grew, time flew. Soon I shall find in passing on, time is gone. That puts it in perspective. When we're a child, carefree, time seems to creep along. As we grow into our teenage years, time seems to walk at a faster pace. Then we reach full-grown manhood or adulthood, and now time seems to run. And then we find ourselves in our older years, and we realize time's flying. And then we face death, and we realize that time is gone. Time is a precious commodity. We only have a certain amount that God has blessed us with. And may we certainly use it for His glory and honor, and use it the way that He would have us to use it. I'm going to go ahead and stop here today, and we're going to finish discussing this text in our next message. But there's two things. There's two things that I want you to take home with you to remember from what we've discussed today. And that is, number one, we don't need to be so prideful and arrogant that we're guilty of making plans for our future without including God. And if you're guilty of that right now, I would encourage you to stop where you are. Stop your planning process and get down on your knees before the Lord. And you humble yourself in His sight. And if there's unconfessed sin in your life, then you confess that sin and you get your life right with the Lord. And then you pray and ask for godly wisdom, for God to reveal His plan and His direction for your life. Because if we're making plans and we're going hard in a certain direction and God is not in it, there'll be a train wreck ahead, for you've gotten ahead of God. Stop where you are. Humble yourself before Him. and ask for His godly direction. And don't make a step forward until you know this is God's will. I truly believe that that is one of the wisest things that Christian people can do in moving forward in life. When you're praying and asking God to give you wisdom and to show you what you need to do about a certain thing, until God shows you, you just keep waiting. You just hold off until God has given you full assurance that this is His will for your life. And when you have that assurance, you can move forward in confidence that you are doing God's will and that He is going to be with you as you move forward with those plans. That's number one. I want you to remember this morning. We don't need to be so arrogant that we make plans for the future without consulting God. Number two that we've seen today, life is short and it's full of uncertainties. We don't know what tomorrow will bring. Therefore, we should live every day by faith, trusting God, whatever comes our way, trusting God that He's going to walk with us and sustain us through whatever may come our way. And in doing so, our faith in Him will grow. We'll grow spiritually, we'll grow in Christian maturity. And as we think about the fact that life here is short, we know that there's a better life to come. We have a better life to come as we look forward to the eternal home that God has prepared for His children. Brother Troy, if you'll come at this time, we'll prepare for our invitation. I don't know how God may have spoken to you today. I don't know what's going on in your personal life right now. Don't know what you're dealing with, what you're struggling with. But all I know is that whatever the situation is, whatever the problem, whatever the trouble, Jesus Christ is the answer. He's the answer. And I would just ask that during this invitation this morning, that if God is speaking to you personally, if you feel the need to come and kneel in this altar and pray, I would encourage you to do that. If there are those here this morning that have a public decision that you need to make, I'll be in the altar. If you need to be saved, then you come and just share with me, Brother Keith. I need Jesus as my Savior. I need you to show me how, to tell me how. I'll be glad to do that. I'll be glad to pray with you. Maybe you need to publicly rededicate your life this morning. Maybe God has made that very clear, that you're ready for your life to go in a different direction. You know that you're saved, but you know that your life is not pleasing to the Lord right now. You're not walking close to the Lord, but you're ready for that to change today. And maybe you'd like to come and just share with me that you want to publicly rededicate your life. And in so doing, you'd like the prayers of this church, that they would pray for you and encourage you in that endeavor. But whatever decision God's laid on your heart, you come. Let's stand together.
Are you weary? Are you heavy-hearted? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. Are you grieving over joys departed? Tell it to Jesus.
God is speaking to your heart today. You come. You move in this invitation. God will bless you.
Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You have no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Do the tears flow down your cheeks unbidden? Tell Tell